The glittering world of Motown wasn't just about hit records and chart-topping success. Behind the glamorous facade of Detroit's most famous record label lay a web of relationships, affairs, and power dynamics that would shape the careers of its biggest stars. At the center of many of these stories was Diana Ross, a woman whose rise to superstardom has been scrutinized, celebrated, and criticized in equal measure. The whispers that followed her throughout her career weren't just about her undeniable talent, but about the relationships she cultivated along the way to the top. Growing up in Detroit, young Diana Ross lived just 4 houses away from Smokey Robinson, who would later become one of Motown's most successful songwriters and producers. Their childhood proximity would eventually blossom into something far more complicated than a simple neighborhood friendship. Smokey recalls those early days with fondness, remembering Diana as just another kid on the block with no indication of the vocal powerhouse she would become. It wasn't until she moved away to the Brewster Projects that their paths would cross again in a way that would change both of their lives forever. The call came after Smokey had already established himself at Motown Records. Diana, now with aspirations of musical stardom, reached out to her childhood neighbor with a proposition. She had formed a singing group and desperately wanted an audition at the legendary label. This phone call marked the beginning of what would become one of Motown's most talked about relationships, though few knew the full extent of what was really happening behind closed doors. When Diana and her group finally got their chance at Motown, Smokey was already a married man. His wife Claudette was not just his life partner, but also a member of the Miracles, making their relationship both personal and professional. The foundation seemed solid, built on shared dreams and musical passion. However, the intense world of Motown, with its long studio sessions and close collaborations, created an environment where lines could easily blur. What started as a professional relationship between Smokey and Diana gradually evolved into something neither of them had planned. The attraction was mutual, and despite Smokey's marital status, they found themselves drawn to each other in ways that went far beyond music. The affair that blossomed between them lasted approximately a year, during which time both struggled with the complexity of their situation. Smokey found himself torn between 2 women he cared deeply about, while Diana navigated the guilt of being involved with a married man whose wife she knew and respected. The relationship wasn't born out of calculated ambition on Diana's part, as some critics would later suggest. Instead, it emerged from genuine feelings and the intimate nature of their working relationship. Smokey was helping to shape Diana's career, spending countless hours with her in the studio, and it was during these sessions that their emotional connection deepened. Diana, young and ambitious, found herself falling for a man who not only believed in her talent, but was actively helping to nurture it. However, Diana ultimately made the difficult decision to end their romantic involvement. The weight of the situation, particularly her respect for Claudette and the potential complications it could bring to everyone involved, led her to step back from the relationship. This wasn't a cold, calculated move designed to advance her career, but rather a moment of moral clarity that demonstrated her understanding of the bigger picture. She recognized that continuing the affair would ultimately hurt everyone involved, including herself. The end of their romantic relationship didn't destroy the bond between Diana and Smokey, though it certainly changed its nature. They maintained a friendship and professional respect that would last for years, with Smokey often speaking warmly of Diana in interviews and public appearances. However, the intensity of their connection was never quite the same after their affair ended. There was an understanding between them, a shared history that couldn't be erased, but also a recognition that some boundaries had been permanently established. This relationship with Smokey Robinson was just the beginning of Diana's complex navigation through Motown's interconnected web of personal and professional relationships. The label was known for its family-like atmosphere, but families can be complicated, and the lines between business and pleasure were often blurred in ways that would have lasting consequences for many of the artists involved. Diana's experience with Smokey would prove to be valuable preparation for even more significant relationships that lay ahead in her journey to superstardom. The most pivotal relationship in Diana Ross's career began when she was just 16 years old, walking through the doors of Motown Records for the first time. Berry Gordy, the visionary founder of the label, represented everything Diana aspired to achieve in the music industry. He had the power to transform talented young singers from Detroit into international superstars, and Diana was determined to capture his attention from the very beginning. Berry Gordy's approach to artist development was hands-on and intensive. He didn't just sign talent and hope for the best, he molded artists into polished performers who could compete on any stage in the world. For Diana, this mentorship was invaluable, but it also created an environment where professional and personal boundaries could easily become confused. Gordy saw something special in Diana that set her apart from other talented singers at the label, though critics would later debate whether this recognition was based purely on her vocal abilities or influenced by other factors. The transformation of the Supremes from a trio of equals into Diana Ross and the Supremes didn't happen overnight, but it was a deliberate strategy that Berry Gordy orchestrated with precision. While Mary Wilson and Florence Ballard were undeniably talented, Gordy believed Diana possessed a unique combination of charisma, ambition, and marketability that could propel the group to unprecedented heights. This decision would prove financially successful but personally devastating for the group's internal dynamics. Florence Ballard, in particular, struggled with being pushed into the background of a group she had helped create. Her vocal abilities were arguably stronger than Diana's in a traditional sense, and she had been an integral part of the Supremes' early identity. However, the music industry has never been solely about vocal talent, and Gordy understood that star power often trumps technical ability when it comes to commercial success. Diana's ability to command attention, both on stage and in interviews, made her the obvious choice for lead vocalist, even if it meant marginalizing the other members. The romantic relationship between Diana and Berry Gordy developed gradually, emerging from their intense professional collaboration. By 1965, their connection had evolved beyond mentor and protege into something far more personal and complicated. Gordy was married at the time, which added another layer of complexity to their relationship. Diana, now a young woman with growing confidence and ambition, found herself drawn to the man who held the keys to her dreams. Their affair was conducted with discretion, as both understood the potential consequences if it became public knowledge. The music industry in the 1960s was far less tolerant of such relationships, and the scandal could have damaged both their careers. However, maintaining secrecy became increasingly difficult as Diana's feelings for Gordy deepened, and she began to expect more from their relationship than he was willing or able to provide. After 5 years of what Diana considered a committed relationship, she reached a breaking point. Marriage had always been part of her vision for her life, and she wanted Gordy to make that commitment to her. However, Gordy was reluctant to marry again, having already experienced the complications that marriage could bring to his business-focused lifestyle. His reputation as someone who preferred to keep his options open was well known throughout the industry, and Diana's expectations for exclusivity and marriage didn't align with his intention. The tension between Diana's personal desires and Gordy's reluctance to commit created a crisis that would ultimately change the trajectory of both their lives. Diana was not the type of woman to wait indefinitely for a man to decide whether she was worth marrying, regardless of how powerful he might be in the music industry. Her self-respect and ambition wouldn't allow her to remain in limbo forever, even if it meant potentially jeopardizing the professional relationship that had been so crucial to her success. During this period of uncertainty with Gordy, Diana met Robert Ellis Silberstein, a music manager who was immediately captivated by her beauty, talent, and charisma. Unlike Gordy, Silberstein was ready to offer Diana the commitment she craved. He proposed marriage, and Diana accepted, perhaps as much out of frustration with Gordy's indecision as from genuine love for her new fiancé. The decision to marry Silberstein while still emotionally connected to Gordy created a situation that would have long-lasting implications for everyone involved. The wedding took place with appropriate fanfare, but Diana carried a secret that would complicate her new marriage from the very beginning. She was already pregnant, and Berry Gordy was the father of the child she was carrying. This revelation adds another dimension to understanding Diana's motivations and the pressures she faced during this crucial period of her life. Silverstein's willingness to raise another man's child as his own speaks to his devotion to Diana, but it also highlights the complex web of relationships that characterized her personal life during her rise to superstardom. The birth of Rhonda Ross Kendrick marked the beginning of Diana's attempt to balance her public image as a devoted wife and mother with the complex realities of her past relationships. Robert Ellis Silverstein proved to be a devoted stepfather, and the couple went on to have 2 more daughters together, Tracy Joy and Chudney Lane. To outsiders, they appeared to be the perfect entertainment industry family, but the shadow of Diana's relationship with Berry Gordy continued to influence her career and personal decisions in ways that weren't immediately apparent to the public. Even as Diana built a new life with Silverstein, her professional relationship with Gordy remained central to her continued success. This created an unusual dynamic where her former lover continued to guide her career while she attempted to build a stable family life with another man. The arrangement required a level of compartmentalization that few people could successfully maintain, and it speaks to Diana's remarkable ability to separate different aspects of her life when necessary for her professional advancement. The transformation of the Supremes during this period became increasingly dramatic, with Diana's role as the undisputed star becoming more pronounced with each album release. The group's name change to Diana Ross and the Supremes made official what had already become apparent to industry observers. This was Diana's show, and the other members were essentially supporting players in her rise to solo stardom. This evolution created significant tension within the group, particularly with Florence Ballard, who struggled to accept her diminished role. Florence's decline during the late 1960s was both tragic and predictable. As Diana's star continued to rise, Florence found herself increasingly marginalized, not just in the group's performances, but in their recording sessions and business decisions. The emotional toll of watching her dreams slip away while her former equals soared to unprecedented heights proved too much for Florence to handle. Her struggles with alcohol and depression became more pronounced, creating a situation where Motown's management viewed her as a liability rather than an asset. The decision to remove Florence from the Supremes in 1967 was presented as a business necessity, but many observers saw it as the inevitable result of Diana's ambition and Gordy's favoritism. Florence's replacement with Cindy Birdsong, who had been recruited from Patti LaBelle's group, added another layer of controversy to an already complicated situation. The timing and manner of Florence's departure left many feeling that she had been unfairly treated by people she had trusted as friends and collaborators. Diana's relationship with the remaining members of the Supremes also became increasingly strained as her solo ambitions became more apparent. Mary Wilson, who had managed to maintain her position in the group despite the changes, later wrote extensively about Diana's behavior during this period. According to Wilson, Diana's diva-like tendencies became more pronounced as her fame grew, with incidents of her wearing different outfits to stand out from the group and using strategic positioning on stage to ensure she remained the center of attention. The rivalry between Diana Ross and Patti LaBelle that emerged during this period illustrates another aspect of Diana's competitive nature. Patti's accusations that the Supremes copied her group's styling choices and eventually recruited one of her members speaks to the cutthroat nature of the music industry during the 1960s. While imitation might be the sincerest form of flattery, Patti viewed these actions as calculated attempts to undermine her group's success and unique identity. The tragedy of Florence Ballard's life reached its devastating conclusion when she died at just 32 years old, broken financially and emotionally by her experiences in the music industry. Her funeral became a final flashpoint for the controversy surrounding Diana's behavior, with many attendees viewing Diana's dramatic entrance and emotional display as inappropriate attention-seeking rather than genuine grief. The image of Diana being carried to the front row by her bodyguards became symbolic of what many saw as her tendency to make every situation about herself, even moments that should have honored others. Diana's later struggles with alcohol, including her drunk driving arrest and subsequent legal troubles, revealed that even superstars aren't immune to the pressures and personal demons that can accompany fame and success. Her phone appearance in court and the plea agreement that followed showed a more vulnerable side of someone who had spent decades carefully managing her public image. The complete story of Diana Ross's rise to superstardom reveals a complex individual who navigated the treacherous waters of the music industry with a combination of genuine talent, strategic thinking, and ruthless ambition. While her critics argue that she stepped on others to reach the top, her supporters contend that she simply played the game better than most, in an industry where success often requires difficult choices and personal sacrifices. The relationships she formed and sometimes destroyed along the way became an integral part of her legend, creating a narrative that continues to fascinate and divide observers decades after the events occurred. Whether viewed as a cautionary tale about the cost of ambition or an inspiring story of determination and success, Diana Ross's journey from a young girl in Detroit to international superstardom remains one of the most compelling stories in entertainment history.